Up and Adam.
Tractor systems are offline.
We are Beyond FM.
Beyond FM.
The future of broadcasting is here.
Up and Adam with Adam Montiel. It's community content from Concentrate. It's Up and Adam with Adam Montiel.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Yes, some say life is just where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
True Crime Tuesday. What is up? Adam Montiel here. Thank you so much for being Up and Adam. Now, in the early days, chaotic days of the COVID-19 pandemic, when the world's shutting its doors, fears are replacing familiarity, a woman named Talina Zar posted one final cryptic message on Facebook. She said she was sick, she didn't want to be found, and then she vanished. No one reported her missing. No one could even reach her. But what started as a strange post quickly turned into something much darker. An online manhunt led by amateur internet sleuths, a dive into fringe subcultures, and a story that peels back layers of secrecy, of identity, even betrayal. And that's where Melissa Jeltsen steps in. Award-winning journalist and host of the iHeart True Crime podcast, What Happened to Talina Zar? She's joining us this morning. We're going to talk about the lines between journalism and obsession, the weight of telling stories about women too often forgotten, and what she uncovered when she followed a stranger's digital shadow into the unknown. And what she uncovered when she followed a stranger's digital shadow into the unknown. It's all coming up. Don't go anywhere. True Crime Tuesday. Don't want to miss this one. All right, before that, everyone has stuff they want to do in their, quote, free time, but not everyone has the free time to do it in. According to a new report, the average American only gets 9.5 hours to themselves every month, which is not a lot. That's 570 minutes, but it breaks down to about 2 hours and 20 minutes per week, or just about 20 minutes per day. The most common things that get in the way: family obligations, work commitments, financial constraints, social obligations, and finally, guilt. And people would be willing to cough up some major cash for a full day of peace and quiet. Average American says they'd pay $2,500. $2,521 was the exact amount for a totally free day. And parents would be willing to pay about another $1,100 more for a total of $3,668 just for some peace and quiet, really. The report also says people would be willing to pay on average about $340 for just one extra hour of sleep. Overall, 53% of people say they need more alone time than they're currently getting, and 38% admit to lying to a partner, friends, or even family just to get some of that alone time themselves. These are excuses like, I'm not feeling well, I have a lot of work to do, I have a headache, I have an appointment, or, oh shoot, my phone is about to die, I can't talk. Really interesting article, and if anything wakes us up to, you need some time to yourself, huh? All right, what do you say? I want to get into this conversation with Melissa. True Crime Tuesday in HD. I am ready. Let's go. First, got to tell you about Pink Drink. So excited. Saturday, July 12th at Elks Lodge. Over 30 of the hottest producers in wine, beer, cider, spirits, craft cocktails, all poolside, all dressed in pink, curated bites, past apps, live DJ, swimming, no kids, vibes you cannot fake. And I tell you, this is not your average tasting. This is summer served sexy. It all supports the Woods Humane Society and the Elks National Foundation, so you can party with purpose. It's exclusive only for the grown and sexy, 21 and over. Priced like it shouldn't be, $65. All you can get into. Come on now, go to Pink Drink, DRANK, pinkdrink.org.
It's Up and Adam with Adam Montiel.
All right, she is an award-winning journalist who spent her career telling the kinds of stories that a lot of people are too afraid to touch, reporting on violence against women, justice that comes too late, and the gray spaces between truth and myth. Her latest project, What Happened to Talina Zar, is a gripping, twist-laden true crime podcast unveiling the mysterious disappearance of a woman during the COVID lockdown, the internet sleuths who wouldn't let her go, and the shadowy subcultures that they uncovered when they went looking. Excited to welcome Up and Adam, the brilliant and bold voice behind one of iHeart's most talked about true crime series. these aren't detectives, Melissa, in badges. They're ordinary people, hungry for answers, feeding on feeds and forums. How did watching self-appointed internet sleuths, driven, relentless, reshape the way you think about journalistic investigation versus crowd-driven hunts for truth?
Well, it's really interesting, right? In the process of me reporting this story for the last year, I tread a lot of the same ground that the online sleuths did, but we had different standards around the way that we approach some of this stuff, right? Like every time I reach out to someone, I identify myself as a journalist. I'm completely straightforward about what I'm trying to do. They didn't have to go by those rules. So they sometimes fudged the truth, said they were a private detective, or said that they were friends with Talina when they didn't really know her. So that is kind of an ethical, murky area, right? I wouldn't do that as a journalist, but I can see how that got them information that they were looking for, at what cost.
Yeah.
So that was one interesting, difference between the way that we approached the same material. But it did, I've never been super close or got to watch what it looks like for a true crime sleuth to really dig into one of these stories. And I was surprised at the lengths they would go to. Like, most people I know don't like cold calling strangers, right?
Oh, they'll do it. Oh, for sure.
Oh, they do not care. They will call a cousin out of the blue, a boss out of the blue, asking questions, and like to get involved in like what could be a potential murder and not be worried about your safety or security. It's really wild.
Yeah.
Impressive and unusual for sure.
I was fascinated that you reveal parts of Talina's life that she kept private. Her chosen name, her involvement in like a fringe subculture. It's kind of a heavy narrative decision. How did you weigh the necessity of telling those hidden details against the possibility of almost re-traumatizing friends or casting Talina as maybe something she wasn't?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big decision. Do we include this part of her life that was a core part of her life? It's the name she chose to go by. It's the community that she spent a lot of time with. And ultimately, we decided that, it wouldn't be a true representation of her to excise that part of her life. And it ultimately came down to the only reason she was in Oklahoma to begin with, the only reason she was around this cast of characters that were, present and potentially involved in what happened to her is because of her involvement in this kind of secretive community. So to leave that out would be not being, honest really with the listeners. But I understood that including it, I really wanted to do in a respectful, empathetic, and thoughtful way to show why this community was so valuable to her. And I think we did that by accessing writings that she wrote herself. So we could really know in her own words why it was so important to her.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so interesting because, Talina's story isn't black and white. It's tangled in relationships, loyalty, trust, maybe betrayal. And as a journalist focused on violence against women, how did you navigate telling Talina's story without necessarily like turning her into like a monolith, like she's all hero or all cautionary,
Yeah, I feel like in my reporting throughout the years on violence against women, this is very common, right? Like no victim is a perfect victim that has, nothing that could be looked at in a negative way. And so trying to break down that stereotype and show that flawed victims or real human victims are real people. So that wasn't different for me. A lot, like even in my season 2, that's really about domestic violence. The woman in that case, who was an amazing young woman, mom, was also a meth user and had problems with addiction and had gotten in trouble herself. So, these stories that we're telling or that I'm telling are real people who are multifaceted, who are loved by many people, who've lived real lives with real pasts. And I think it makes the story richer to include all of that.
Your final episode dropped as police say they're getting closer than ever, right? And then a sudden death kind of shifts and changes everything. When that late developing element hit your narrative, how does it force you, Melissa, to kind of reframe everything you thought and actually kind of built towards?
Yeah, I mean, trying to work out how to sprinkle out the information throughout the episodes and build to an end is always difficult. In this case, especially so because there is no end really, right? There are 2 criminal trials that are upcoming. There's one that will take place just a few weeks after the show airs, so later this month, and I'll be attending that trial and I'll be reporting from it there and some bonus content. But yeah, most of the stories I've done, the cases are kind of closed or there's been some distance. This is all still happening right now, which does provide us with an opportunity to continue telling the story down the line.
I'm so curious, the toll on a storyteller when you carry someone else's trauma. I mean, you're living Talina's disappearance too, in a way, because you're following it so closely. How do you recharge after walking through it so many times? What are things that you do that are maybe some unwinding rituals when you hang up the headphones and just kind of, move on with your life in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a better answer for this. I think it's just practice, but, I walk my dogs and watch lots of mindless TV like Love Island.
90 Day Fiance, right?
Yeah, Married at First Sight.
Right.
But, you never quite put it down. Telling a story like this requires developing relationships with sources. Like I text with Talina's sister quite often, right? Like she'll let me know how she feels when each episode comes out and how this storytelling is affecting her family. And that's a relationship that will continue.
Yeah.
So that's just part of the project, really.
Does that weigh on you heavily, though, once you have? I mean, we talk a lot to, let's say Chris Lambert of the Your Own Backyard podcast. And then in that, getting close with like Kristen Smart's mom, Denise Smart, and the family. I guess it's this way. True crime is something that's fascinating to us. You're reporting on it. But when true crime starts bleeding into either your own backyard, literally, because it's happening right around you in your neighborhood, or you get close with some of these people, it can take on a real realness, a real tangibility. Like, well, this is really something that breaks someone or hurts a family. And here I am reporting on it. How do you kind of ride that line?
I think, I take that seriousness into the reporting and telling of the story. It's really important to me that the story is respectful and that the family feels seen and honored. And ultimately, I know Talina's sister has said her mom is just afraid of Talina being forgotten. And so I do think telling a story like this, a podcast like this, is an opportunity to keep her memory alive.
Talina disappeared at a time when our lives were documented, from Zoom feeds to geotags. And in your reporting, I'm wondering if you uncovered ways the pandemic itself shifted our private lives into public data. And maybe what did that discovery change on how you feel even about privacy now?
I mean, it is interesting that so much of Talina's life was discovered online. There's the Facebook posts about her sickness, and then a lot of her private life was discovered on online forums. I think that, what we choose to share can shape the stories that we tell about each other. I certainly try to be cautious about what I put out there. As like kind of a public-ish person, as a journalist. But, I think the pandemic was really there was a real switch there when we started becoming so often online, camera facing, and sharing, in this kind of way. But yeah, I'm not sure how much it has changed my life other than just being aware that anything that is put out there, could come up again. It's all, it's all permanent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for better or for worse. One thing you wish the public understood, maybe about journalism and trauma reporting, what do you think that would be?
I guess I wish that the public knew how hard and complicated it is to tell stories like this. A lot of the comments I get online is like too repetitive or too confusing, back and forth. And we're trying to do our best to make it understandable, to contextualize the story so that we understand why we're telling this. It's not just about Talina. It's about people like Talina. It's about crimes that happen under the shadows of a pandemic. It's about law enforcement and how we solve crimes like this and what role true crime sleuths can play. So yeah, I guess just having a better understanding of what it takes to do a story like this, a year of reporting, it's a lot.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's funny because the bigger you get, the more you're going to have just as people chime in with, these things that just like, oh gosh, but yeah, so keep your head down, keep doing it because you're killing it.
People keep saying I have a speech impediment. I'm like, what? Yeah, people do not like my voice on the podcast.
Oh, really? That's such a bummer. Well, I don't know. Maybe coming from 25 years of radio, it's like I think of all these things from the fundamentals of it. Like, okay, what are we teasing? Are we here in radio? There's this thing called quarter-hour maintenance where you're always teasing what's up in 15 minutes. So if you have something coming up in 15 minutes, a part of your story that you're going to get to, are you dropping little breadcrumbs and teasing it so then you pay it off later, get to the next tease? There's all these kind of things that have in radio broadcasting, because it's an intimate medium where you're often just hearing someone, they've kind of, we learned over the years, but maybe just even connecting with some more of those kinds of things. But the whole speech thing, that's exactly what I mean when you just talk about people just dropping these comments. You're like, come on. I'm not even going to waste my time with that one. Yeah. I think you have a great articulation and great way of speaking. I've really enjoyed this so far.
Oh, thank you. And I know lots of people have. I just take it as the podcast has been successful. People are interested and invested in the story.
Yeah, you're casting that net wider and wider, and the more people you get under that net, the more kind of those you're going to get under that net. So God bless. It means you're doing something actually really good. So let me ask you this. When someone disappears, this is what's crazy to me, Melissa. There's usually a trace, footage, footprints, something. But Talina's story seemed to resist resolution. What was the most haunting part of reporting this story? Was it a detail that you couldn't shake? What was there? Maybe the silence where something should have been? I don't know.
Yeah, I think she went missing in the very beginning of COVID, when our lives had just been completely disrupted. Like, people were not going to work, people were staying home. This is when we first learned the terms like social distancing,
right.
Flatten the curve, and all of that stuff. So if it wasn't COVID, people would have seen her more frequently. We would have a better sense of exactly who the last person was to see her, exactly when that was. But because of the isolation and the separation of the time, there was like a bubble around her that we couldn't pierce. So that allowed her disappearance to kind of fade into the shadows and not have a better sense of the exact timing, which would have been really helpful for police. And ultimately they did narrow it down, but it took them, months. And, I don't want to give away the ending of the story, but this was not quickly resolved. And there were so many clues and so many strange events that took place. And yet it was like the police were always just, one step behind. And it took a really long time for there to be some resolution.
And I mean this with all due respect, but what do these stories reveal, not just about crime, but about how society decides which women are worth looking for?
Yeah, I mean, when this story was emailed, when Jess, the internet sleuth who really dug into the story, first contacted me about Talina, asking me to look into the case, I asked, why, what was so important about this story? And she said, this is a 50-year-old woman who is just a regular person. She's not like a 20-year-old blonde, beautiful young girl that everybody is really, it's on national news. So she was concerned that because of just her averageness, that there wasn't that much attention to it. And it's true. There wasn't, it could have been a major national news story considering the outlandish nature in the Facebook post and the fact that she just disappeared off the face of the earth. But yeah, I think there are some stories that the public gravitate towards, young, beautiful women that go missing. Also, people who have a lot of people, like friends and family that are making a lot of noise around them. And that wasn't the case. Talina lived a very private, quiet life where she asked for privacy. And so when she went missing, a lot of people were reticent to make noise, go to the news, go to the police. And that sort of worked against her because there was kind of a cone of silence around her.
Yeah. Wow, Melissa, the podcast is fantastic. You're doing a great job. Keep going. Thank you for taking the time here, being up and at 'em and sharing with us all the links in the show notes. And I hope we get a chance to chat again. I'd love to interview you again sometime.
Thank you, Adam.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
You can follow Melissa on X. Got all the links in the show notes, as well as to the podcast and her website, everything else you need. All right, before we get out of here, you know what I love? When a business doesn't just sell you something, they serve you. That's why I'm pumped. Singers Big and Tall is now right here in SLO. After 50 years in the game, just since 1975, they moved from Santa Barbara to Los Osos Valley Road, right next to the Rib Line, or right in that same plaza, rather. And these guys don't just size you, they see you. Bruce and Ellen are the heart of it all. Their hospitality, next level. Shopping for a wedding, they'll even tailor what you buy right there in-house. If you need help, they'll FaceTime you to get it right. Great hospitality. Big and tall or just hard to fit, this is your spot. Show them some love. Singers Big and Tall. Fit happens here. Let them know you heard them on Up and Adam. All right, getting on to the week. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Lots of great interviews coming up this week, including 16-time Grammy winner David Foster. That's going to be a fun show. That's coming up later this week, among a lot more. Thanks to our friends at Moonshiner Collective for giving us original music on the show called Start Again. MoonshinerCollective.com to find out more about them and stream them wherever you get your music. Check out Tamber Winery. And thanks to our friends Josh and Chiasa Clapper for the Lowbro Studios at Tamber. Their tasting room is in the village of Arroyo Grande. World-class wines, Tamber, T-A-M-B-R-E. They're also going to be at Pink Drink, tamberwinery.com. And thanks to you for rating, reviewing, subscribing to the show wherever you listen to it. It means a ton. For sharing it with a friend, really helps others discover what we're doing here. So thank you. Till tomorrow, I'm Adam Montiel. Thank you again, and thank you so much for being Up and Adam.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again. Let's start again. We'll start again.